welcome to the show. We are live from our Dungarvan studios. I must be the worst weather forecaster in the country, am I, Mary?
I think you are, but you know, a lot of people depend on Damien. So when Damien says it's 9 degrees in Portlaw, they all run out and hang out the washing.
And then we have Mary from Ferrybank saying, what time will I bring the washing in, Damien? What time? A nice cock step in the evenings. There is a bit of a stretch in it, and it is looking like it's going to be benign today. That weather forecast means that we're not looking at any major change. There's a big high over Ireland at present. There's a lot of high as well in regarding politics, and we're going to start with politics. The Irish Independent this morning has details of those pensions which you heard Emer talking about. It's worth having a look at online, but if you want to, please do support newspapers. Again, go out and buy a newspaper, because supporting journalism is very important, both nationally and locally. And the Dungarvan Leader, Dungarvan Observer, looking at both papers this morning, packed with really, really good local and national news. The pensions for former TDs or outgoing TDs calculated, it says here, by financial analyst Carl Dieter, available using information regarding TDs and their entitlements, their age, their Dáil service, industry standards. And it talks about the lifetime of the pension that, for example, Enda Kenny will get a pension value over the lifetime of 3.2 million. John Deise will get a pension value of 1,053,739. That will, and there's a lump sum of 126,000, an annual pension therefore of 42,000. John Halligan, we quoted the other day, and thankfully I wasn't too far wrong in my estimation, but the total pension value is coming out at €755,588. That's 755,588 euros, a lump sum of 63,000, an annual pension of 21,000. So he's not going to get $750,000 straight away. This is a pension entitlement over the lifetime of a normal pension, and others there besides. Also this morning, I got a phone call on the way in this morning to Dungarvan from a friend of mine who is on the way to hospital in UHW. And he tells me, I haven't confirmed this with the HSE or UHW, that the cath lab may be closed today and possibly on Friday. And he's on the way in because his friend has suffered a heart attack, and he has been shocked 4 times in the ambulance on the way into the hospital. And just on the way in, being told the cath lab might be closed. And that may not be true. I don't know that. I'm not confirming that. But this man is somebody who's in the know. So if anybody is in working there today or in and around the cath lab, please let us know. We have emailed the HSE. We've made some contacts within the hospital. No confirmation of that this morning. But to my friend and to his very good friend, we hope you're okay. Genuinely hope you're okay. A very, very difficult time and very, very difficult situation for anybody to be in. Mary Butler is here with me in studio. Mary Butler, Fianna Fáil TD for Waterford. Good morning.
Good morning, Damien, and good morning to everybody listening.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. What we're going to do, Mary, is we're going to do our 12 with Tiernan, our chat with the politicians. We're going to have Damien Geoghegan in later, the candidates running in the general election. And just to let you know that Kieran Hartley has decided he's not going to run, and he's put out a statement this morning. We'll come to that later. So Kieran Hartley is not running. Eddie Mulligan, as we understand, is running, has his name in, and there's been no change in that. He went up to Dublin and was talking to Fianna Fáil headquarters yesterday. There's another story in the Irish Times today, and just looking at the paper, it is on page 6. There's an old PR, public relations adage that if a story runs for longer than 48 hours, it could start causing trouble. So a third story in the paper today, in the Irish Times, 3 days in a row, Owen Dalton and Colm Keena. So what we're going to do, Mary, is I'm going to chat with you a little bit about the situation of the party locally first, and then we'll give you enough time, in other words, a clear 12 minutes to talk about your own policies, and both nationally and locally. So I think that'd be fair. Is that okay?
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
No, not at all. That's the right way to do it, because it wouldn't be fair to be eating into your time on this particular topic, because this effectively is a news item, and that's the way we are dealing with it. So this morning's news, as you heard on our news bulletins, is that a Fianna Fáil general election candidate in Waterford served as a director on the board of the local theatre company, receiving a High Court order disqualifying him, despite a High Court order disqualifying him from doing so. Eddie Mulligan, councillor, had received the order in January 2017 because of his management of his family's hair salon business. It disqualifies him from being operator of a company director, and is in place until 2024. However, the councillor served on the board of Garter Lane, a non-profit limited by guarantee, for 17 months subsequent to receiving that order. Now, Eddie Mulligan has put out a statement this morning on Facebook. I'm not going to go through it fully. It's quite detailed. basically saying that my wife and I are tax compliant. I'd received no written notice from the High Court to Liquidator or the Office of Director of Corporate Enforcement in relation to my disqualification or restriction. I dug out notes of my telephone conversation with my solicitor. To date, I've received nothing in writing informing me of the effective date or the details of the order. As soon as it was brought to my attention by the accountants, Garter Lane, I resigned from the board. I cited personal reasons, as it's a hugely shameful and embarrassing thing to have to discuss with anyone. He talks about his work in a voluntary capacity with Garter Lane. He says he didn't further answer questions regarding matters that were posed to him on Monday, as he responded to email to journalists and believes that he wasn't quoted correctly. He attended the Fianna Fáil meeting in headquarters last night to discuss the media content. Ultimately, he says, as he said on the programme earlier in the week, my wife and I, Derval, have made incorrect choices during the time of the worst economic crisis in history. We paid the price personally, professionally and emotionally. We're trying to rebuild our lives. I await my fate as Fianna Fáil and consider my future in public life. Thank you so much for the support, inspiring, fantastic messages. We hugely appreciate them. It's a very difficult time on a personal level for any family to go through that. I know it's Derval's birthday today. Happy birthday, Derval. And their daughter has been getting some questions in school about this type of thing, and she's only 10.
It's very, very difficult for Eddie, Dervla and Éireann, especially a young child. I have a young family myself. The youngest is 14. But when it impacts on your family, it makes life very, very difficult. I didn't hear Eddie's interview on Monday morning. I was actually signing my own nomination forms in Waterford Courthouse with my husband Mick and with Neil Rooney. And it was only at lunchtime I actually got the opportunity to listen to the interview. And you would want to be made of stone not to have felt for Eddie and his family. I was self-employed myself for 17 years, all through the late 80s and the 90s. I ran a business in Portlaw with my dad first, and then with my sister when he passed away. And running a business is extremely difficult. And, you know, there's so many people who have come through the recession scarred. It had a huge effect on families. It had a huge effect on finances. People lost their lives over the recession. There's no doubt about it. And on a personal note, I really felt for Eddie, and I felt for Derval and Éireann and the whole family that were involved. However, as a public representative myself, there was an onus on Eddie, and there was an onus on every public representative when you sign a party pledge to inform the party of anything that may be in your background that is reference to your public life, to your personal life, because when you're in politics, there's no secrets. Everything is out there.
Does everybody have skeletons?
I don't know whether everyone has skeletons. I don't think there's any of us too perfect. And we all say things at different stages in our life that we might bite our tongue later and say, how in the name of God did I say that? But, you know, when you have lived life, when you have ran businesses, when you have bought a house, when you've paid mortgages, when you have raised families, when you have worked in different businesses and opportunities, of course everyone has something behind them that they might prefer not to have done or said.
You were quoted in the Irish Times in response to this, and I presume your answer is the same. As you say, you've mentioned about the personal thing, and then you talk about the professional, political aspect of this regarding the Fianna Fáil pledge and regarding the idea that if something is going to come up or if there's any issues relating to financial dealings in the past that may affect your performance. Like, there's nothing here from a Fianna Fáil perspective that would disbar Eddie or anybody else being a TD. So previously, before 2013, you had to be if you were declared bankrupt. So that was changed by Alan Shatter in 2013. We know about the Mick Wallace case, for example, and issues such as that. So technically, if Eddie Mulligan did run and get elected, there's nothing to disbar him from being a TD. That's the first thing. So what we're talking about is rules, regulations, and I suppose specifications of the pledge within each party and how a party deals with issues such as this. They had a meeting up there in Dublin yesterday. You weren't at it?
No, and I wasn't aware of the meeting either.
You hadn't been told about it?
No, I had not. And that's fair and honest.
That's strange, though.
No, I wasn't aware of it. But you see, we're all individual candidates at the end of the day. And even though, like, every Fianna Fáil TD in Ireland, as far as I'm aware, has a running mate. But I wouldn't be privy to the talks with Eddie no more than he'd be privy with any talks that the national headquarters would have with me. So that wouldn't be unusual. Would
you have liked to have known?
Well, you know what I mean. I heard it this morning, and then I heard you speak about it. Yes, as the sitting TD in Waterford, I would have liked to have known. Yes.
Because as the sitting TD of 4 years, 5 years, you're the established TD. You're the face of the party in Waterford. What's your view regarding Eddie Mulligan's situation now?
Well, I would like to say that I know Eddie since he joined our party, and I welcomed Eddie into the party with open arms. I was a councillor at the time. Eddie has worked very, very hard as a Fianna Fáil councillor. He has worked very, very hard for Waterford. And the one point I would like to say in relation to the report in the Irish Times today, and that Eddie was a member of the Garter Lanes board as a director for 17 months, I think the people of Waterford need to know that when you're a director on one of these companies, I was on the Theatre Royal and I'm also on the board of Deise currently. You do it on a voluntary capacity. You do not get any remuneration and you do not even get expenses. And I think that point should be put out there. Most councillors, most of the 32 councillors in Waterford would sit on a board. At the same time, Eddie was disqualified as a company director, and he did state in his interview this morning on the paper that as soon as he found out that he recused himself from that particular board. So I can only take Eddie at his word. I'm probably in a little bit of a vacuum because what I'm learning, I'm reading on the papers and I'm hearing on the WLR.
As you know from previous interviews, Deputy Butler, I like specific answers to specific questions. What is your view now about whether Eddie Mulligan should stay on the ticket for Fianna Fáil?
Well, as it stands today, and as you said, there is nothing in the rules and regulations that would disallow Eddie Mulligan from being a TD in Leinster House. You mentioned Mick Wallace. There was also questions over one of the Fine Gael ministers, Regina Doherty, in relation to business dealings in the past. And as I sit here today, Eddie Mulligan is my running mate. I believe he has lodged his nomination papers the same way I lodged mine. And that's the situation as I sit here now.
And your personal view?
My personal view is that I would be a firm believer that every citizen in Ireland has to uphold the laws of the land.
And he has upheld the laws of the land in the sense that he's been disqualified. He's gone through those procedures. Do you think he should stay on the Fianna Fáil ticket?
I think that's a question Eddie will have to answer for himself. I didn't see his statement.
But you're the face of Fianna Fáil. You've just admitted that.
Yes, I am the face. So I am the face of Fianna Fáil. It's not a decision for me to make, and that decision will be made by the National Constituency Committee that meet in Dublin in Mount Street on a regular basis. They will be monitoring everything going on today. I'm not here today, to have a go at Eddie Mulligan. At the end of the day, I
understand that.
Eddie Mulligan. As you said, I'm here today to discuss my campaign going forward.
And would you prefer not to answer the question in the sense that you prefer not to give an opinion one way or the other? If you don't want, that's fair enough.
I think because Eddie was at a meeting with Fianna Fáil headquarters yesterday with the National Executive, the Director of Fianna Fáil, the General Secretary, I don't know what happened at that meeting. I don't know where the land lies. I'd say listeners are amazed that I don't know, but I actually don't.
My understanding is that there are some people within the Fianna Fáil hierarchy that have asked or would ask Eddie to take himself off the ticket.
Yes, I'm not aware of that.
If you were asked your view on this, would you give an opinion or would you sit on the fence is the wrong word? You know what I mean? You're trying to be fair to everybody on this. I understand that.
I'm trying to be fair to Eddie. I don't know all. I only know what I've read in the Irish Times. I've only know what I've heard on the news bulletins and your own interview on Monday, which was, I have to say, was a very good interview with Eddie. It was a very emotional interview. But I do believe from where it goes now is it's between Eddie and it's between the National Executive and it's between the General Secretary of Fianna Fáil as to what happens. If Eddie Mulligan is on the ticket with me, I will do my best to maximise the vote for Fianna Fáil.
Have you spoken to Eddie Mulligan since the weekend?
I rang him Monday evening and I also rang him yesterday, but I didn't get a reply. Now, what I would say is that's not unusual at this time. I'm out canvassing all day, every day, going to different events. And, it's in the evening time you get back, maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock, try and get a bite to eat and you look at your phone. It wouldn't be unusual. I've missed calls on my own phone. That's not a criticism.
No, absolutely. And I'm not being critical. I'm just asking a question.
Yeah.
You haven't spoken to each other?
No, not in person. No, I haven't.
Not in person?
Yeah.
Because that might, some of our listeners might find that surprising, that two Fianna Fáil candidates running in a general election and a major political and personal story, and you've spoken about the personal admiration for Eddie and all that, you haven't spoken.
No, but I did call and I didn't get a reply.
Okay. How have you divided up the constituency, or is it a free-for-all in terms of posters, in terms of campaigning? We see every party, when they run two candidates, possibly three, they'll try and divide up the areas. For example, Damien Geoghegan is based in Dungarvan. We'll be talking to him in a little while. John Cummins is in the city. There might be a division up there. Like, you have posters up in Waterford City, Eddie Mulligan's metropolitan area. Is there a division?
There's no divide, because it would be very difficult for me to have a divide, because I have my full-time constituency office is on the waterside in Waterford City with the last 4 years, and there is no divide. And just when you mention Damien Geoghegan, I was in Knockanore, nearly in Youghal, you could say, last Saturday week at an event, and John Cummins appeared, as did Damien Geoghegan. So I just think Waterford is a big city and county, and that's one thing we should remember.
Are you doing everything to maximise the vote for Fianna Fáil? In other words, is every leaflet that you're putting out, every poster you have says vote Eddie Mulligan number 2?
It does. My new posters do. The recycled posters that I had 4 years ago don't.
Do you want to see Eddie Mulligan stay on the Fianna Fáil ticket?
That's a difficult question that you've asked me, but what I want to see is Micheál Martin as leader of the next government, and in order for Micheál Martin to be leader of the next government, we need as many TDs as possible. So, as I said earlier, Eddie is currently my running mate, and I will do everything I can to maximise the Fianna Fáil vote.
If Eddie Mulligan is taken off the Fianna Fáil ticket, and if he runs as an independent, what would you do? Just keep going? I'll
just drive on as I'm doing at the moment. Drive on regardless.
We're coming up with 12 with Tiernan and Mary Butler.
Thank you.
Now, welcome back to the programme. We're getting a lot of texts and comments coming in, some in favour of what Mary has been saying, others saying Mary is straight talking, others saying Mary doesn't answer the questions. So they're around 50-50. Mary working very hard for Waterford, other people talking about issues regarding Eddie Mulligan. So I will read out some of those texts. One person said, Damien, read out the text, don't turn WLR into RTE. I most certainly won't. I left RTE so that we'd have more interaction with people on the ground. That's one of the reasons anyway. Nothing to do with my pension. And so what I'm going to do is we will read out more of the text, but I want to give people the time to comment, and I want to give people the time to be able to do their bits and pieces. So like I said, 12 minutes. Part of our ongoing 12 with Tiernan, 12 minutes with Mary Butler, and we are going to start now. Mary Butler, why should people vote for you?
I believe I have a proven track record. I was elected in 2016 and I immediately opened a constituency office in Waterford, and then 6 months later I opened one in Dungarvan. I'm the only TD in the whole of the county that holds regular advice clinics throughout the whole county, from Tallow, Lismore, Capperquin through to Ballymacarbery, Portlaw, Kilmacthomas and Tramore. I believe I'm the most accessible TD on the ground if anybody wants to meet me at any time. I also believe I have been a voice for Waterford. I've put Waterford first, city and county. I think it's very important. Some people believe that some TDs represent different areas, maybe city, maybe county. I believe I've represented all of Waterford city and county, and I've also worked constructively with Oireachtas colleagues in relation to big ticket items. There are only 4 TDs in Waterford. There will only be 4 TDs in Waterford. And it's very important when you're trying to move forward that you have a unified voice. I also believe that Micheál Martin will lead the next government, and I believe I will have a big say in the future of Waterford going forward.
I have a photograph here in front of me, the unfortunate photograph somebody will call it. It shows Mary Butler with Micheál Martin. Fianna Fáil will secure 24/7 cardiac care in UHW. This is a picture taken. We've discussed this before.
We have.
It's a big ticket item. The new figures are out this morning that Munster, in terms of health, the percentage of people in Munster concerned with health is still massive. What have you got to say if people show you that picture?
I see that photograph every day of the week on my Twitter feed, on my
Are you
Facebook
serious?
feed. Oh yeah, that. And as I said to you before, that photograph focuses my mind, because we did say we would deliver 24/7 cardiac care. We weren't in government for the last 4 months, last 4 years, as you know. But what you do know is, and what the people know is, that I have worked constructively with all my colleagues. I've attended every march I possibly could to try and make sure that the people of Waterford and the South East have equality of access for cardiac care. My father-in-law was in that particular ambulance, so I'm not immune to it. Mary Butler could get a heart attack driving back down the road to Portlaw later on. But it's very, very important that going forward, that 24/7 cardiac care is delivered for Waterford. Now, as we all know, the planning permission came through 2 weeks ago for the second cath lab. Currently, there's 2 positions being advertised for 2 more cardiologist consultants. In order to have 24/7, I think it's so important important to say this. You need 7 cardiologist consultants located at UHW or in the region. Currently, there are 490 vacancies throughout the whole country for consultants. It's not only Waterford. That's the first issue. The second issue is we've got the planning permission. The build has to go ahead now. It'll take between 12 and 16 months. It is very slow.
If anybody texts in, can you ask Mary, did she make false promises? How do you respond to that?
I don't believe we made false promises, because I think if somebody won the lotto of the Euro Millions in the morning and they put the money there, it still would have to have a build of a second cath lab. You still have to get the consultants in place. And a very important question I asked to the Minister for Health was that if we were lucky enough to secure 24/7 cardiac care tomorrow, would the current consultants in Waterford, be able to deliver that service under the current contracts? And the answer was a categoric no.
Were you aware of meetings that took place that would have allowed for a maybe staged approach, that it goes 8 to 8 as opposed to 24/7?
I wasn't aware of the meeting that took place between Minister John Paul Phelan and Matt Shanahan and Paddy Owens. I wasn't aware of that. I heard it on your programme. As you know, the Oireachtas members meet with the South West Hospital Group and the manager of the hospital, Grace Rothwell, on a kind of a monthly 6-weekly basis. That has been going on for the past 12 months. And in order to deliver cardiac care, we have discussed at different times that it would be easier to roll it out staged. So if we could get to 8 to 8 and then 8 to 12 and then a 24-hour service, anything is an improvement. And that's the way I would look at it. But as you said, you sent out good wishes this morning to a friend of yours, or a friend of a friend who was on their way to hospital. I do believe it's very, very important to also state that there is a functioning cath lab now open in Whitfield. And I think it's very, very important that we could try and get some kind of service level agreement like we have for radiotherapy with Whitfield when there are stoppages or when there is downtime in UHW, because it's only 2 miles of a difference in travel.
That won't be a 20... Is that not diluting and taking away the possibility then of staffing and doing all the stuff that may be necessary at UHW? Are you not sort of saying, well, it can be picked up? Is that not what happened with the radiotherapy?
No, there was no radiotherapy available to people who attended UHW. If you have cancer and you need radiotherapy, you don't really care where you get the treatment once you can get it in your own locality. And I believe if I had a heart attack today and someone said we're on our way to Whitfield or we're on our way to UHW, once there's a functioning cath lab there, once you're brought to where they can do the service for you, I think it's very important. Now, some people say you're privatising it, but if there's a service level agreement and there's a facility there to accommodate people in Waterford and the South East, why not use it?
If Fianna Fáil are in power and if Mary Butler is in power, will ye deliver 24/7 cardiac care?
I have a commitment from Micheál Martin that if we are in power, we will deliver 24/7 cardiac care. However, I have to add the caveat that you need 7 consultant cardiologists in the area. We currently have 3.5 posts. You have to get the consultants here. We can't drag them by the hair. You have to have the staff here, and you have to have the second cath lab. So it has been slow progress, but we are getting there slowly but surely.
Would you deliver it within the lifetime of the next government?
Oh, I would hope so. Like, that's 4 years. The cath lab should be finished within the next 12 to 18 months. And hopefully, like, Fianna Fáil have a huge focus in relation to health issues going forward, in relation to recruiting nurses, in relation to recruiting consultants. And if we could have the consultants in place and the second cath lab, we can deliver the service.
6.5 minutes on already. Amazing how quickly the time flies. There's so many issues we can cover. One of the issues, you're not going to reduce the national herd. Fianna Fáil are saying you're going to keep the national herd as it is. Are you basically not aware or in tune with green issues?
No, I actually sat on that Green Committee for 6 months. Now, I spent a lot of my time in relation to issues for older people, especially just transition. You take an older person that the only way they can heat their house is to light the fire with a bag of coal and a bale of briquettes or a bag of sticks, and we want people to be carbon neutral. It's very, very hard to tell an 80-year-old person who is living in fuel poverty that that's the only way forward. So I put a huge lot of emphasis in relation to my input into the committee like that. 22% of people in Ireland are in fuel poverty, so that's something we have to be aware of. And for someone who wants to just transition to a carbon neutral effect in their home, they have to be supported financially. In relation to the national herd, we have to remember first and foremost, we are an agricultural island, and you know, a huge amount of our agri-industry is supporting our farmers and our communities throughout the length and breadth of the country. So no, we're not supportive of reducing the herd.
Would you go into government with the Greens?
We've been in government with the Greens previously, and I believe we could work with the Greens going forward. But
even if they're talking about completely diametric views regarding some issues regarding carbon.
You see, when you're going into government with anyone, you have to be able to compromise. So the Greens would have to be able to compromise on those issues.
They'd have to come around to your way of thinking.
Well, there would have to be compromise on both sides.
Would you go into government with Sinn Féin?
No. Categorically, no. Micheál Martin has been very clear.
Fianna Fáil TD in Donegal suggested they may well be open to talks.
Well, Micheál Martin has stated categorically that we will not go into government with Sinn Féin. My own view is that Sinn Féin aren't ready to govern yet. I suppose the Twitter line will explode now. But I suppose when you stop and think about it, we've come through a situation where we had the politics of chaos and confusion in Westminster for the last 3 to 4 years. There was a very good deal on the paper, on the table proposed by Theresa May. And at a time when the Republican communities in Northern Ireland had no representation at all in Westminster, the seven Fine Gael MEPs sat on their hands. They take the Queen's shilling, they take the expenses, but they won't take their seats. They also collapsed. Stormont.
They're now back in Stormont.
They are after 3 years.
So they are in power.
They collapsed. No,
and they would argue because of very, very valid reasons that the DUP weren't playing ball with them. So, they can govern.
Think about it, Damien. They collapsed Stormont because of Arlene Foster and the cash for ash. No, just let me finish the point. Just let me finish the point.
You've got 3 minutes.
Just let me finish the point. They collapsed Stormont because they couldn't work with Arlene Foster over the cash for ash. Now they're back after 3 years, which is very, very welcome, with Arlene Foster as the First Minister. And just look at our own situation here in Waterford City and County. There was a progressive alliance put in place for the local authority.
Yeah.
And at the first hurdle when it came to passing a budget, the 6 Sinn Féin members, apart from one who abstained in the first vote, I might say Councillor Declan Clune, did not pass a budget. So when it came to passing a budget, to taking the hard choices, they ran away. You
on this programme have consistently praised the work that you can do with David Cullinane. You can work with him. Could you not work with him in government?
I can work.
You can work with him is this just political posturing?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because when you have outside influences determining what way Sinn Féin decide to do business.
Influences?
Well, I would imagine that the Army Council in Belfast still has a significant role in how Sinn Féin do business in national politics.
How do you know that?
I just, I have heard a lot, I have read a lot in relation to it, and there was a lot said during the Cash for Ash scandal as well. And I just believe at the moment...
It's a very serious accusation.
I just believe at the moment that Fianna Fáil are adamant that we will not be going into government with Sinn Féin. And I also
you've read stuff, but is this from intelligence or just stuff you read in the papers?
No, it's not from intelligence. It's stuff that I have just picked up. But I also think you have to look at. I also think you have to look at the bullying culture within.
No, hold on a second. You're an elected deputy, right?
I am.
You're now saying that one of the major political parties in the country is effectively being influenced by the Army Council.
Yes, that would be my belief.
And where's that coming from? You haven't specified where's that coming from.
That would be a personal belief I have. I have read different things, and I know there was reference made to it recently by Micheál Martin, and that would be where I would come from. I also believe...
Is this Fianna Fáil policy?
No, Fianna Fáil policy is not to go into government with Sinn Féin.
Yeah, but not because of the Army Council allegedly be behind Sinn Féin.
But also, no matter how you look at it, there is a bullying culture within Sinn Féin, and they have lost up to 40 councillors over the last 4 years.
They would deny that.
No, and they're entitled to deny it, but they would say
there's bullying within every political party.
There's no bullying within Fianna Fáil that I'm aware of. But what I will say is that I have actually spoken to one of their former TDs. I met her at an event, and they would say differently.
Finally, what are the issues? 20 seconds. That's going to get you elected.
The issues that are going to get me elected, I believe that Fianna Fáil have moved swiftly in relation to the pension issue, which is coming up on the doors the whole time. So Micheál Martin stated quite clearly yesterday that we would agree a transition pension payment at the age of 65, the same amount of the pension, which is $248.30 for the contributory pension. And we also believe in pension equality. So I believe that's going to be... It's one of the main issues on the doors at the moment. You talk about health and housing the whole time, but that's a major issue. Mary Butler, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Gorf Mahagut. Fáilte Road.
Now, welcome back to the programme. What we're trying to do in the programme over the coming 2 to 3 weeks and last week is get a balance between politics and other matters, and we will do that as we go along. There's some obviously political issues that we have to deal with at certain times, and this has been a major political issue this week in Waterford. There's quite a lot of texts coming in, some endorsing Mary, saying she's really good for the county, others saying that she's not answering the question properly, others saying the Cat Lab, who was on Facebook last night, is going to be closed today and Friday and won't be opening until Monday. Others criticising about her comments about Sinn Féin. Others saying that what she's saying about Sinn Féin, they think that she's right to say that. So there's lots of other people commenting about that. We'll come to all different matters as we go along. I'm joined now by Damien Geoghegan, who is a Fine Gael councillor here in Dungarvan. Damien Geoghegan, good morning.
Good morning, Damien. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Damien, we're going to do our 12 with Tiernan in a few minutes, but again, the same thing with Mary. I know it's a different political party, but I think it would be incumbent on me to ask you, what's your view on the Eddie Mulligan situation?
Yeah, I think that although it is an internal matter for Fianna Fáil as to whether Eddie remains as a Fianna Fáil candidate in the general election, I do think that Eddie does have some questions to answer, I have to say. Having read the stories in the Irish Times on Monday and indeed yesterday, and there's some more in it today, Eddie is to be complimented and for being entrepreneurial during periods of his life, but and he's not to be criticised when things go wrong, but I do think that he has handled it very badly. We all know about governance and good governance and the declarations that we have to make as public representatives, and we have to do that as local public representatives. And I would have been one of the councillors, for example, that would have supported Eddie's nomination to Garter Lane, for example, in Waterford. I would never have known, for example, that Eddie would have been barred from holding any directorships and that. So look, I do think there's questions there for Eddie to answer. On a personal level, I absolutely feel sorry for Eddie. It was very difficult listening to him, speaking to you the other morning. Elections are difficult, can be very difficult and stressful times for people, and it was very obvious from that Eddie is hurting right now. So I'm certainly not going to put the boot into Eddie Mulligan here this morning, but I do think there's some questions to answer.
Damien Geoghegan, 12 with Tiernan, here we go. Why should people vote for Damien Geoghegan, Fine Gael candidate in the upcoming general election?
Well, I think, Damien, that people should vote for me, judging me on my past record as a public representative. I'm a public representative now since 1999. I'm over 20 years. I've served on Dungarvan Town Council for 15 years. I've served on Waterford County Council. I carved out a seat here in Dungarvan and here in West Waterford on my own bat, as it were. I wasn't handed a seat. There wasn't anyone in the family, as it were. It was something that I worked really hard at. I would also ask people to judge me on my own life experience. I have experience in life, I worked many different types of jobs over the years. I once had to emigrate to get work. I have two young adults at home going to college. I can understand and I'm in touch with people, and I understand the issues that concern them. And I think that I'm passionate about Waterford. I'm passionate about where I'm from, and I want to bring it to the next level now. And I want to represent the people of Waterford in Dáil Éireann, and I think I could do a fine job.
What do you do for a crust?
What do I do for a crust? I worked for 23 years in GlaxoSmithKline here in Dungarvan, and about 6 years ago I had a health issue, let's say, and I had an opportunity to finish there, and I did. I took that opportunity, and I went full-time at politics. So I'm a full-time county councillor. That's what I do. I get paid 17 grand a year to do it. But I enjoy doing it. I love what I do. I've loved politics all my life, and I love serving the public, and that's what I do.
You are a politician in a party. You haven't been in government yourself. You're looking to get elected. John Cummins is the other Fine Gael candidate. Have you divided up the county? Are you working together? Are you talking to each other in terms of vote management?
We haven't divided up the county. There is no divide. It's open to both candidates to canvass.
Open season.
It's open season. We can canvass both city and county. I think that's the best way to do it. I think it actually avoids problems and difficulties. When parties traditionally try to divide up the constituency, it can lead to a lot of problems. I will say to you that when there was 3 candidates on the ticket, when myself, Paddy Coffey and John Cummins was on the ticket, the party had decided to divide it. But when Paddy decided to step back and leave politics, we have 2 candidates in the race, myself and John Cummins, and it's city and county open to both of us.
So you'll be campaigning in Portlaw?
Absolutely, I'll be campaigning in Portlaw, the city, Tramore. I have lots of friends and connections in that area, yes, and I'm sure John will be out around the county. Are
you playing the West card, that the West needs a TD?
Absolutely, very much so, Damien, in fact.
Is that to deflect from the hammering that the government may get?
No, and I don't believe the government will get a hammering, but I do think it's important when this election is over. There's 11 candidates, I believe, in the race now, and I mean, nominations close today at 12 o'clock. I think 2 of those candidates, 2 of the 11, will be based west of Kilmeaden. That's the entire rural west part of Waterford, mid-county and West Waterford, with 2 candidates. And I'm reminding people that when it's all over and the four TDs are elected, I really think it's important that West Waterford and the mid-county of Waterford and Dungarvan will have one of those representatives. I think that's really important. We've had one since the foundation of the state.
Well, there was once, I think,
once for a couple of months, but by and large, there's always been a representative from West Waterford in Dáil Éireann, and I think, and I'm obviously going to remind people of that and canvass on that basis.
So that's a geographical thing.
Yes, that's a geographical thing that's very obviously there. So I would obviously pointing it out to people.
Does that make you parochial?
It doesn't make me parochial in any way at all. As I say, I'm a member of the county council for a number of years. I've served as the mayor of County Waterford, in fact, and indeed I was the last mayor to serve in that position in 2013, 2014. Waterford to me starts on the quays in Waterford and it ends up in Knockanore. Sometimes people forget that there's life this side of the Butlerstown roundabout, I have to say. I mean, for example, so far in the debate here in Waterford, we've been discussing a lot of issues which would be important to everybody, city and county. But there's an awful lot of county issues out there, for example, that's not being discussed, and rural issues.
Like what?
And farming issues, for example, farming issues aren't being discussed here in Waterford.
Well, we discuss farming issues quite a lot. I've done it on this programme quite a bit. We will be having debates about this. How do you defend, like the hospital, the regional hospital is a hospital for the region. It's a hospital for Dungarvan, for Knockanore, for Portlaw, for Ballybeg. How do you defend on the doorsteps your record regarding the party's record in government regarding the Cat Lab is still not built?
The Cat Lab has received planning permission now, right?
It's
so that
still
second
not built.
Cat Lab will be in place, right? And will take 18 months, I'd say, to 2 years to put it in place. Recruitment should begin immediately. The recruitment process should begin now.
Why wasn't this done 3 years ago, Damien Geoghegan? You and me, over a certain age, God forbid, we could get a heart attack any time, weekend. Could be in trouble.
Absolutely, and hopefully not. And it should be delivered, and it hasn't been delivered, despite promises made in the past by people in my own party and people of no party here in Waterford.
So how do you defend that?
I'm not defending it. I'm saying it should be delivered and it has to be delivered. There is no way the people of Waterford or the people of this region should suffer from what I would call apartheid in the health system. If we lived in Limerick or Cork or Dublin or Galway, we would have a Cat Lab. It's unacceptable to me to not have a Cat Lab available 24/7, and we've got to deliver that Cat Lab within 2 years. It's imperative that it be delivered.
If Damien Geoghegan becomes a TD for Waterford in the next government, will 24/7 cardiac care be delivered for Waterford in the lifetime of that government?
I believe it will be, yes. And I believe we're moving towards that now. As I say, planning permission for the second Cat Lab, that was really important. The second Cat Lab was put in place. Increase the hours there, and then you move to 24/7. You recruit. We need 7 consultants. That's the reality of it, and we need to recruit those consultants. And there is a recruitment issue there, so it's not just a case of whether the money is put in place or not. There are issues around recruitment that have to be addressed, and we have to deliver 24/7. It's the least we deserve.
I have a picture on my phone here of Enda Kenny 2007. We will end the scandal of people waiting on trolleys.
Yeah, absolutely wrong. And that's the type of politicking and electioneering that I absolutely can't stand, to be honest with you. During the time of an election, people having their picture taken outside Waterford Regional Hospital, or doing what Enda Kenny did, putting his photograph on billboards and that. If anybody checks my own record in politics, they will see that I've never gone out in an election. Since 1999, I've contested a number of elections where I've actually made promises to people. The only promise I ever made to people is that I would do my absolute very best to represent them.
You've just promised 24/7 care.
I believe 24/7 will be delivered within the next 2 years. Absolutely believe that will happen. And it needs to happen.
What about hospital trolley waiting lists? I was talking to Mary in Kilmacthomas the other day. She's still on a list regarding procedure 2 years. Like what?
Absolutely.
What do you have to say to them?
Absolutely. And I believe that
you've been in government now.
And I believe that we have a growing population and we have an ageing population, and it's putting pressure on our health system. And I do believe that the focus that has been put on providing primary care and care in the home is the way forward. An extra 1 million hours, for example, for home care packages. That's an extra 1 million hours on top of what's already there. That's really, really important, and we're getting there. Here in Dungarvan, for example, you can see that brand new primary care centre built at our local community hospital. That's the future for our health system. system, that we can care for people in their own locality and we can care for people in their own homes. And that is absolutely imperative. And the problem is actually, as I say, we have an ageing population and we have a growing population. So the pressures within the health system are actually going to continue to grow over the next number of years. And we've got to be ahead of the curve on that.
But that's something to be planned for. It's something that's very obvious. It's something that's not coming up like on the outside track. It's something that you know about. Here's a headline from a newspaper. Mental health services need 2,400 additional staff. This is from the HSE. In other words, you're falling down completely on mental health services across the country. Again, another area where health and the government and Fine Gael have failed.
Yes, and the HSE, and there are recruitment issues there. I mean, you touched on it there in that story. It's recruitment is the issue, recruitment and retention of staff. And that's something that the government has to look into. It have to look into terms and conditions. They've got to look into how the staff are treated, the conditions of their work. All have to be looked into, and it has to be dealt with. Otherwise, like a country that doesn't have a proper, decent health service has nothing really when you think of it.
Why hasn't it been dealt with in the last 5 years?
Well, in the last 5 years, you must remember, this country was broke. It was literally on its knees. The IMF were in here. There was no money. The first budget surplus in a decade was actually in 2018. The end of 2018, right? That was some turnaround in 10 years, you've got to admit. I mean, our economy was flattened, it was floored. People were leaving to get work in Australia, people were leaving to get work in the Middle East, and that has turned around now. And we're on an upward curve. And now that we are on an upward curve, we must start investing money in our services, such as the health service.
Does it annoy you that Fine Gael are now trailing in the polls to Fianna Fáil, that it looks like Fianna Fáil, whom you accuse of having ruined this country, are now back in the driving seat?
Yeah, it is an interesting dynamic when you look at it. I mean, it's just 10 years ago since we had a Fianna Fáil Green government, and we all saw what happened there. I mean, the country was just left in an absolute... Would we have ever thought we would have seen it in such a mess?
Would you go into government with Mark O'Cahusig of the Greens?
We've never been in government with the Greens before, but the Greens are something... There are some really good people in the Greens, I have to say.
Yes or no?
There are some really good people in the Greens, and it would depend on what sort of programme for government would be cobbled together, as it were, and would be agreed between the parties. But I think right now we have this whole debate and discussion about climate change that's out there. Like, we are a green country. We are an agricultural country.
You don't want to see a reduction of the national herd?
I don't want to see a reduction in the national herd. And I actually think when I'm out there canvassing and I'm meeting people, farmers right now are hurting, and they're hurting really badly, and they feel victimised almost. They're and a
lot of them are blaming the government.
The finger is being pointed at farmers in this country. They're our food producers. They're the ones who look after the land. This is what we do really well. We produce the best meat in the world. And yet all of a sudden the issue of climate change comes front and centre, and the fingers are pointed at farmers, and they're pointed wrongly at farmers.
What about Sinn Féin? Would you go into government with Sinn Féin?
No.
Why not?
No, there's too much of a divide between both parties. Sinn Féin haven't proven themselves in any way, shape or form capable of governing. You can look at it from the local level here, where they literally had the chance to show how good they are, how they could run the council. They couldn't even run the local council here. That's the reality of it. They couldn't put a budget in place, having spent a number of months discussing it, and they ran away at the first hurdle.
You've been in meetings with David Cullinan. You've got on well with him in the past. Could you not get on well with him in government?
On a personal level, I would get on quite well with most politicians, actually. There's some great people in every party. But Sinn Féin, there's just too much of a divide there between Fine Gael and Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin would pull the plug, and they would always do what's in Sinn Féin's best interests, I have to say.
What did you think of what Mary Butler had to say a few minutes ago?
Well, that's Mary's view as to why she or why Fianna Fáil wouldn't go into government with Sinn Féin. But the policy differences would be my big thing.
Policy differences. Finally, why should people vote for you on the basis of all those things I've just spoken about, the failings of the government, people being felt they're forgotten about, the economy may be going great, people are not maybe recognising that, there's so many issues out there. Are you getting the message across? Are you finding it hard on the doorsteps? Why should they vote for you?
I'm getting a good reception on the doorsteps, and people recognise my record on the council. They recognise my work as a public representative. They recognise that I'm in touch with people. I'm somebody that, I'm in touch with people all of the time. I don't just show up at election time. I'm available to people all the time. I'm in touch with people, business people, the farming community. I come from a working class background myself. I'm very proud of that working class background, and I'm asking people to put me in there and let me do for Waterford what I think I've done for my own locality over the past 20 years. I want to represent Waterford. I'm passionate about Waterford.
Damien Geoghegan, Councillor Geoghegan, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Damien.
Now, welcome back to the programme. Our text and WhatsApp number, as you know, is 083 3333 975. Our phone number is 051 846 123. We're in the Dungarvan studios. Our text line is hopping. Our phone lines are hopping. We're not going to get to all the texts and comments. I will read out some of them before the news now. We've run over already. I'll read out some of them afterwards. Taxi driver ran in to say the pensions the retiring TDs are getting is a disgrace. Taxi drivers used to use their plates as a pension nest egg, but now they can't. Tony in the city says that Eddie shouldn't be allowed to run for the election. Others saying that he should go as an independent, and others saying that Eddie should be allowed to go, that he has integrity. Other people saying there's 2 cardiac arrests in the hospital at the moment. What's the answer to that with the cath lab closed? Eddie says, what happens if there's no Waterford TDs at the cabinet table? Waterford won't have a hope of getting anything. John talked about Mary talking about her love for Waterford City and County. Different people. John rang in to say Mary said an atrocious comment about the Army Council being influencing Sinn Féin. She should be made to explain that comment and verify where she got that information. So many texts and comments coming in. It really has ignited a debate. Stay with us. We'll bring you more of those next.